All right, so you want to know if Merck is a good fit for your portfolio?
Yeah, and we've got a ton of research here ready to break it all down.
Perfect. We're going to cover their financials, market dominance, innovation pipeline,
Oh, and of course their ESG record, the good, the bad.
the complicated. Let's get right into it. What's really interesting to me is how much history is packed into this company.
Oh, yeah. It's not some, startup flash in the pan company. Merck goes all the way back to the 17th century.
Wow, 17th century.
Started as a simple pharmacy in Germany.
Okay, so how does a 17th century pharmacy turn into like a pharmaceutical powerhouse? What was
Yeah.
their secret sauce back then?
Well, you could say they had a knack for identifying and producing some pretty in-demand products.
Okay, like what?
In the 1800s, they were already commercially producing morphine.
Morphine. Wow,
They even pioneered a method to extract it from opium.
that's fascinating. Let's fast forward to today, though. How's their financial health looking in the 21st century?
Yeah, so in 2023, they pulled in over $60 billion in revenue.
60 billion? That's a lot.
Yeah. It's a pretty significant jump, even from just a few years ago.
Okay, so big revenue numbers, but is that growth sustainable?
Well, their market share is a big piece of the puzzle.
Okay, what do you mean?
They consistently ranked in the top 5 pharmaceutical companies globally. That's some serious market power.
Okay, so they're a big player, but the pharmaceutical landscape is also like super competitive.
Oh, absolutely. You constantly have to be innovating to stay ahead.
Right, because a company is only as good as its next big drug.
Hmm.
What's in their innovation pipeline that's got everybody excited?
Well, they have a few promising contenders, and it's not just about developing new drugs either.
Okay, what else is there?
It's about strategic acquisitions, too, like their recent purchase of Prometheus Biosciences.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
$10.8 billion investment focusing on immune-mediated diseases.
Immune-mediated diseases, so they're not afraid to spend big to boost their pipeline.
You got it. But the question is, are these acquisitions paying off?
Right, and how's it impacting their valuation?
Well, the market seems to be cautiously optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Their price-to-earnings ratio is sitting a little higher than some of their peers, suggesting investors are banking on future growth.
Okay, that makes sense. But some investors care more about the dividends, right? How does Merck stack up there?
Merck has a great reputation as a solid dividend payer.
Really?
They've consistently paid dividends for years. They even have a history of increasing those payouts.
That's appealing for sure. But I've also heard some chatter about their share buyback program.
Yeah, share buybacks can be kind of controversial.
But
Some argue it's a smart way to return value to shareholders,
okay,
while others see it as potentially inflating stock prices without creating real value.
interesting. So are buybacks a good thing in Merck's case or a red flag?
Well, it's important to look at the details.
Okay.
One concern is that their buybacks could be partly fueled by debt,
Okay, so potential debt concerns, all right.
which can be risky if not managed carefully.
Right. That adds another layer to this whole is Merck a good fit question.
For sure. And we can't forget about the ESG factors either. Merck has a kind of mixed record there.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. They have their Mectis donation program, which seems like a genuine effort to combat river blindness.
Absolutely.
But then there's controversies like the whole Vioxx situation.
Exactly. Investors are really paying attention to these non-financial factors now.
So it's not just about profits anymore.
It's about how a company conducts business and their impact on the world.
Okay, so to recap, we've got big revenue, dominant market share, a promising pipeline.
Right.
But we've also got potential risks with their acquisitions, buybacks, and this complicated ESG history.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here before we can decide if Merck is a thumbs up or thumbs down for your portfolio.
Okay, sounds good to me.
We're going to have to dive a little deeper into some of these areas, especially the impact of their recent acquisitions.
Okay.
And take a closer look at those ESG factors.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So before the break, we were talking about Merck's acquisitions, right?
Yeah, specifically the Prometheus Biosciences deal. Like $10.8 billion is not chump change.
Right, that's a big investment. So Prometheus, they're developing treatments for immune-mediated diseases.
Okay, and is that a growing market?
Huge growth potential. And one of their leading drug candidates targets ulcerative colitis.
Ulcerative colitis. And what's that?
It's a chronic condition with not a lot of great treatment options right now.
Got it. So this acquisition is like a bet on the future, hoping to kind of tap into that lucrative market.
Exactly. But the question is, how does it fit into Merck's existing portfolio?
Yeah, are there any overlaps, or are they going to be competing with themselves?
Yeah, good question. Analysts are definitely watching that closely. Merck already has a presence in the immunology space,
Right.
but Prometheus brings new tech and expertise to the table. The key will be integrating these assets effectively.
Okay, so no redundancy. That makes sense. Investors will be watching how this plays out. Now, let's circle back to ESG for a sec. We talked about that Mectazin donation program,
Right.
but it seems like a small piece of their overall picture.
Yeah, it's just Merck's overall ESG performance is a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest.
What do you mean?
They've made some progress in some areas, like reducing their environmental impact.
Okay.
But they've also gotten criticism for things like drug pricing, and their marketing practices.
Yeah, the Vioxx controversy. It's like a reminder that even well-intentioned companies could really stumble.
Absolutely. And that casts a long shadow. How has Merck responded to that crisis, though?
Yeah, and what are they doing to prevent something like that from happening again?
Well, they've definitely implemented stricter safety protocols, and there's more transparency in their clinical trials now.
Okay, that's good.
But some critics say they haven't gone far enough to address concerns about their corporate culture and, accountability.
So, still a work in progress.
Mhm.
What should investors be paying attention to specifically when they're evaluating Merck's commitment to sustainability?
I think it's important to look at their progress on environmental goals,
Yeah.
like reducing greenhouse gas emissions, waste reduction. How are they managing social risks, like responsible drug pricing
Right.
and access to health care in developing countries?
Makes sense. What about governance?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
How transparent are they about their political lobbying, their campaign contributions?
Right, right. These are all important factors.
For sure. Investors are demanding more accountability across the board. Merck's no exception.
Okay, so we've dug into their acquisitions. We've gone through ESG.
Yeah.
Now, what about their services business? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, they're not just a pharmaceutical manufacturer anymore.
What do you mean?
They have a whole services segment that's becoming a key part of their business strategy.
Interesting. What exactly does that entail?
It's a range of services that support the healthcare ecosystem.
Okay, like what?
Things like drug distribution and delivery, healthcare data analytics,
Wow.
and even patient support programs.
So they're becoming more of a partner, not just a drug maker.
Exactly. Yeah, they're positioning themselves as a more comprehensive healthcare partner.
Smart. But is this a big revenue driver for them?
It's still relatively small compared to their overall revenue, but it's steadily growing.
Okay, interesting.
Huh.
It seems like they're diversifying their revenue streams
Mhm.
and trying to create a more, sustainable business model for the future.
Exactly. It's a smart move considering all the pressure on drug pricing.
Right.
Right.
And the fact that the healthcare landscape is constantly changing.
Constantly changing. Okay, so we've looked at acquisitions, ESG, this interesting services business.
Right.
Now let's zoom out a bit and think about their economic impact.
Yeah, because they're a massive company, so I imagine their influence goes way beyond just the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely. They're a major employer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Both here in the U.S. and globally, their operations span research and development, manufacturing, distribution, all those services we just discussed.
So they're creating jobs, contributing to economic growth, playing a big role in the healthcare ecosystem. But let's bring it back to our main question. Is Merck a good fit for your portfolio?
We've gathered a lot of information about their financials, market position, innovation, their ESG efforts.
The recent acquisitions, that services business, and even their broader economic impact.
Right.
Now it's time to kind of synthesize all of this and help our listeners decide if Merck is a stock they should consider buying.
All right, let's recap the key takeaways from our deep dive.
So it's decision time, right? We've really dug deep on Merck, looked at their financials, their market position, even how they're doing on the whole ESG front.
Yeah.
What's the verdict? Should you buy this stock?
Oh, it's not a simple yes or no answer. Merck has a lot going for it, strong financials. They've got those blockbuster drugs everyone knows, a history of solid dividends.
Right.
And they're not just sitting back, They're making these big moves, acquisitions like Prometheus Biosciences to try and stay ahead of the game.
Right, but then there's the other side. That Prometheus acquisition, as promising as it is still a gamble. And their ESG track record, it's not perfect. The Vioxx thing, even though it's in the past, I think it still raises questions for some investors.
For sure. There's no such thing as a risk-free investment. And Merck, even with their size and history, they're not an exception.
So how should our listeners be thinking about all this?
Yeah.
What are the big things to weigh when deciding if Merck is right for their portfolio?
It really comes down to a few questions. First, what kind of investor are you? Are you someone who goes for growth, betting on future potential, or are you more into that steady income from dividends?
Yeah.
Merck might appeal to both, but you got to know your priorities.
And what about risk tolerance? Are you okay with a company that makes these big bets on acquisitions, or do you prefer something more conservative?
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about ESG. If ethical considerations are important to you, Merck's mixed record might give you pause. It's all about making sure your investments match up with your values.
Okay, so we've got the pros and cons, the questions to ask. But one more thing I'm thinking about. We talked about their services business, their impact on the economy. Where does Merck go from here? What's their long game?
That's the billion-dollar question, right? They're clearly trying to set themselves up for a future where healthcare is more than just pills and treatments.
Right.
That services business, it's small now, but could become a big part of their strategy going forward.
So they're adapting, evolving, trying to stay ahead.
Yeah.
But will it be enough? Can a company with so much history be nimble enough to compete in a world that's changing so fast?
That's the challenge. And it's something we'll be keeping an eye on. But even if we had a crystal ball, predicting the future is impossible.
Right.
All we can do is get as much knowledge as we can, analyze it, and make the best decisions we can.
Well said. So listeners, it's your call now. Weigh the evidence, think about your goals, and decide if Merck fits into your investment journey.
And remember, investing is all about learning. This deep dive, it's just a starting point. Keep researching, ask questions, and never stop exploring the world of finance.
And we want to hear from you. Head over to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, tell us what you think about Merck, or maybe suggest another stock you want us to cover in a future episode.
Until next time, happy investing.